fail and let the little banks become big and consolidate. And if we deregulated the process, that would happen. So really, by propping up the big banks, they're just keeping the rot in place.
Yes, they are keeping the rot in place, and I don't see how they can stop in inflation if they don't. If they're, I think overall what they're doing with all their overall policies is disincentivizing investment all over the place and freezing progress in a lot of ways. So who would, that has a spiral effect. Who's going to invest from abroad?
Regardless of whether they're doing the right thing, you can see coming down the road that they're going to have a lot of trouble with inflation, because it's not just one or two problems that the Fed is dealing with currently. It's dealing with a compound array of problems. I've got a kind of a list here. They're buying treasury bonds to finance the deficit. I think you covered that, right?
Yeah.
They also bought a bunch of these dysfunctional mortgage derivatives to prop up the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac disaster, and they boosted bank liquidity.
Yes.
To some kind of a really obscene level, like 9 or 10 times normal, in an attempt to stem deflation. They don't seem to realize that deflation is normal during an economic downturn, and it should be allowed. And so they've gone to extremes to prevent what would be a normal, in my opinion, a normal process. And so these three things that I just mentioned are sort of compounding the problem, and as a result, the Federal Reserve has boosted its assets by I don't know how many trillion, $2 or $3 trillion, what the number is, but it's just a huge amount that is unprecedented. And for them to sit there and say that, oh well, don't worry, because we're going to undo this before inflation strikes, I don't think they have the political will to do that. Now, the Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent of the other branches of government, and is supposed to do the right thing, right? Because they have no interest in propping up presidents, or and that's at least that's the theory. But in practice, that's not the way it works out. These people all talk to each other in Washington. They're buddies. They have luncheons together. And if you're the Federal Reserve Chairman and the President comes to you and says, Mr. Chairman, I've just got to have this and got to have that, and he's socially connected to you, how are you going to be independent? And plus, the President can replace you in 4 years. So this is a problem. The Fed is independent in name only. It's really not functionally independent.
Right.
And plus, another problem is, maybe the main problem, is that it has conflicting mission statements. Originally, it was to promote a stable money supply, and that's what it was created for in 1913. And then in 1970-something, the Congress decided they would be cute, and they added another mission statement, is to promote full employment.
Yeah. Can
you believe it? Full employment. Well, a stable money supply is not commensurate with full employment. You can't have one. You can't do one, and you can't do them both at the same time. They're going to be conflicting. So it has an impossible mission statement. There's no way it can succeed at what it's trying to do. So number one, it's an impossible task. Number two is it is influenced by the political process, and so it's doomed to failure. And I think that's what people have got to realize, that you just cannot trust the government in general, the Federal Reserve in particular.
Right. They've essentially doubled the size of the money supply. I saw another graphic on that in the last few months. But they claim that money is really going to the banks in terms of reserves and adding liquidity, as you said, and that they think they can throttle that back by some of these tricks they're talking about. This article. But like you said, the political will is probably not there. Essentially, they're going to have to raise interest rates at some point, if the inflation starts taking off.
Basically, politically, it's too easy to confiscate people's savings and wealth through the mechanism of inflation, and that's the way to bet.
Yeah, and ironically, the very people they're trying to save by these redistribution programs and heavy-handed control, they're going to get hurt the worst, because the inflation is probably the most regressive type tax you're going to have.
Well, no, I don't agree with that. I think that inflation really causes chaos, so it hurts everybody, including poor people. But the basic mechanism of inflation is to confiscate wealth from savers and lenders and hand it over to people who are in debt. So in other words, they pay back their loans with money that's less valuable. And so that's the mechanism. It's a transfer of wealth mechanism, and since the government is the biggest debtor, the government makes out like the biggest bandit.
Yeah, the inflation works to their advantage.
So that's why it's irresistible for politicians to inflate. It's because they borrowed all this money when it was valuable, and now they're going to pay it back when it's worthless. And so they've confiscated people's wealth. They've gotten away with it, and most people don't even understand how it works or what happened.
Yeah.
They think inflation is some sort of a virus that just comes out of the sky. They don't realize that inflation is produced by their government.
Right. And the chaos that ensues, of course, is going to chase investors away and increase unemployment. And so the people, again, the least skilled people and the people that are in poverty, they are going to be worst affected. They're not going to have jobs or they won't have jobs, or they'll have subsistence wages or under the table, whatever, and they'll have to buy goods that are maybe increased in price 20-30% over a period of a year or two. I think that's what happened in the Carter years. Or it couldn't go worse. I mean, they actually mentioned the Weimar Republic in this article. And they said, which was an interesting fact, was that the Weimar Republic was monetizing government expenditure at a 50% rate when the hyperinflation took off in the 1920s. The Fed, as of May of this year, has monetized 15% of federal expenditures in the preceding 6 months. So it's well short, but and as I say, not negligible. And it kind of stops there, but I don't know if there is a relation. That would be interesting to see more data on the hyperinflations in other countries too, and where the tipping point is.
We've never had hyperinflation. I'm sure you're aware that in the German situation there in the 30s, that it took a wheelbarrow of money to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
So I mean, no, it's probably not going to be that bad, but it'll probably be similar to what we had in the 70s when we had 15% interest rates and about the same percentage of inflation. I mean, it's very disruptive to the economy. There's less